You're infuriating, and you're beautiful when you're mad." With that, the small distance between them collapsed, enveloped by the warmth of the night, where worries faded, revealing only the gleam of stars above, winking conspiratorially as if they too were in on the secret unfolding beneath the heavens. Scene 11. A terrifying vision. Tonja Coleman sat cross-legged on the aging leather couch in the center of the FBI's small break room, a steaming cup of joe nestled between her hands. The coffee's rich aroma mingled with the faint scent of burnt toast wafting from the toaster, a dismal attempt at comfort amid the backdrop of fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead like a swarm of angry bees. Shadows danced across the room as the flickering appliances battled the overbearing brightness, oddly mirroring the indecision twisting in her gut about today's briefing. "Hey, superstar!" Rosie Santana, her best friend and steadfast confidant, entered, shaking her head with that familiar lopsided grin. "What are you doing in here? The briefing's about to start. Are you ready to save the world again?" Tanja managed a smile, but it felt strained. "I didn't think the world needed saving today," she replied, her gaze dropping to her untouched cup. The swirling dark liquid seemed to taunt her. "I'm still feeling the weight of last week's case. It was intense, but what's the plan for today? You've got that psychic thing working, right?" Rosie nudged her, a flicker of mischief in her eyes. "Any chance you're going to tell us what danger to expect?" Tanja's skin prickled at the memory of the vivid vision that had haunted her sleep last night, a horrendous tableau of chaos and blood. Her stomach churned. "I'm not sure it's a good idea to share everything," she finally said, watching Rosie's expression shift from playfulness to concern. "But if you've seen something," Rosie's voice dropped, her brows knitting together, "you have to tell me. You can't just pretend everything's fine like it always is." As the clock ticked closer to the briefing, Tanja thought of her friends back at the office, the seasoned agents who would look at her with skepticism if she shared her gradual ascent into a depth of darkness they couldn't comprehend. "People will think I'm losing it, Ro. They need me to be focused, not some oracle spouting doomsday predictions. Or maybe they just need you to be real for once. They trust you." Rosie pouted, then her eyes widened. "And Enzo? He'll want to know. He always knows when something's off with you." The name lingered in the air, creating a charged silence that was suddenly palpable. Tanja shifted uncomfortably on the couch. "Enzo has enough on his plate," she whispered, recalling the way his eyes glimmered with concern whenever he looked at her. "I can't add to that." Rosie scoffed. "Come on, it's not all on you. You're an incredible team. Not to mention you both practically live in each other's heads. He can handle your visions." Tanja's mind swirled again with the image of a decaying warehouse, figures cloaked in shadows, guns poised, and the acrid smell of gunpowder filling the air. The heaviness of the premonition pressed down, squeezing the breath from her lungs, and she found her footing slipping. "A hit is coming, Rosie. I know it. I can feel it in my bones." With a firm shake of her head, Rosie leaned closer, her voice a low, soothing murmur. "Then you need to speak up, at least to the team. We can't afford to ignore a warning, Tanya. It's not just your life at stake." And just as she spoke, the door swung open, splintering the tension like a twig. Enzo Arnaud strode in, his expression shifting from casual to serious as he registered the charged atmosphere. He leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, dark eyes flicking from Rosie to Tanja. "What did I walk into?" "Just girl talk," Rosie deflected, a conspiratorial smirk breaking the tension. "You know how these discussions go." "Uh-huh. And how many times am I actually included in those discussions?" Enzo quipped, his lips curving upwards just enough to hint at his signature charm, piercing through the layers of unease. "It's about the briefing," Tanja replied, the weight of inevitability settling over her once more. "I think we need to push for increased security." "On what grounds?" Enzo's brow furrowed as he stepped further into the room, his cocked hip leaning slightly against the counter. Every inch of him radiated an intensity that had sparked an unnameable desire inside her, a fierce urge to draw closer, share everything. "I had a—" She hesitated, the word vision looming large but unvoiced. "A bad feeling. We've been targeted." Before he could respond, she could see the fleeting spark of doubt flicker behind his dark gaze. Rosie's eyes darted between them, sparkling with mischief as she tugged on his sleeve. You trust her instinct, right? Of course. Enzo's voice finally cut through the suffocating air, his determination matching hers. But we have superiors to consider. Tonja felt the rumble of frustration surge within her. We have to convince them this is serious. I know, he said quietly, intensity shifting in the small space they occupied. But how do we make them listen? Let's just stick to the plan, Tonja said, heart racing at the prospect of her team dismissing her fears. Yet the urgency clawed at her resolve. Because if we don't act soon, we might not have a team to worry about at all. Scene 12. Internal conflict. The cold rain drummed against the large glass panes of the Quantico FBI headquarters, turning the world into a blur of grays and shadows. Inside, the fluorescent lighting buzzed, casting an unwelcome brightness over the tense gathering in the conference room. Tonja Coleman stood at the head of the table, her figure tall and imposing, but her brow furrowed, betraying the storm within. A low hum of voices buzzed around her. Agents spoke in hurried whispers, eyes darting towards the door as if expecting a ghost to appear. "Does anyone know who could be leaking our plans?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with urgency. She caught Enzo's eyes, and for a moment the room fell silent. They shared a look, a silent communication steeped in the weight of their circumstances. "Maybe it's one of the new recruits," suggested Ellen, one of their tech analysts. "I've seen a few of them hanging around the coffee machine like it's a social club." Tonja shot a glance at the door, half expecting an unwanted visitor. "We can't afford any distractions," she reminded, her tone sharper than intended. "If they know what we're working on, it puts everything at risk." "It's not just that," Enzo added, leaning forward, a flicker of intensity in his usually composed demeanor. "It's dangerous. We need to tighten our circles. Fast." The tension thickened, a palpable knot that wound itself tighter in everyone's chests. Outside, the rain lashed against the concrete, mimicking their racing hearts and fraying nerves. Tonja felt the cold moisture seep in through the glass, drifting into the room like anxiety. "There's something else," Enzo continued, flicking his gaze toward the whiteboard plastered with their case details. "Last night, I got a tip-off. Someone's already had eyes on us." Tonja's throat tightened, and she instinctively crossed her arms, the chill creeping down her spine. "What do you mean? Who? Could be the syndicate, or," he hesitated, his voice dropping, "could be someone in here." Gasps rippled through the room, but Tonja's focus remained on Enzo. His dark eyes glimmered with concern, and she felt her heart quicken, a mix of fear and frustration that bubbled just below the surface. They had sworn to trust one another, to be a shield in a world of secrets. "Enough of this paranoia," called Philip, the special agent in charge, his voice booming across the table. He crossed his arms, the faintest hint of disdain betraying his unease. "We can't point fingers without evidence. It's unprofessional." "Unprofessional?" Tonja snapped, her passion igniting. "People's lives are at stake, Phil. If there's a mole, then we'll deal with it, together. But right now we need to focus on the investigation." His tone shifted slightly, as if appealing for calm within chaos, but Tonja barely registered his pleading gaze. "Focus on the facts. We can't." As the arguments flared, the ambient noise faded into the background, and there was only Enzo, his presence drawing her in like a magnet. He stood by her side, an anchor amidst the hurricane of voices and rising tempers. Tonja sought for solace in his proximity, the warmth emanating from him a stark contrast to the cold reality outside. As the room erupted in debate, she felt herself leaning toward him, instinctively searching for his reassurance. The whirlwind of chaos around her, the shouts and barbs, began to dull into senseless echoes. "Tonja," he said softly, breaking through the din, creating a pocket of silence just for their exchange. "No matter what happens, let's keep our focus." "Right," she replied, the heat rising in her cheeks as his words lingered. Just being near him calmed her racing heart, though anxiety still skirmished within. There was something electric in their connection, something deeper that hinted at uncharted territories. Her voice trailed off unexpectedly, leaving her to wonder about the boundaries they danced around. "Just what?" he prodded, his brow quirked in amusement but shadowed by genuine concern. "Just what if this is bigger than we think? What if trusting each other isn't enough?" "There's no what if," he quipped, a smile creeping onto his lips. We will outsmart them together. Tonja found herself smiling back. The room swirling around them created an odd sense of intimacy. It drowned out the threats, leaving only their laughter and connection. But the shadows crowded at the edges of her mind. Can their silent bond withstand the impending storm? Just then, a loud crash punctured the air, followed by a thunderous clap of thunder outside. It jolted them back to reality, a reminder that danger lurked just beyond the cracks of their fragile trust. Scene 13, Undercover Assignment. Tonja stood at the edge of the gritty lot, the distant hum of the city swirling around her, a constant reminder of the danger that loomed just beyond the shadows. She ran a hand through her hair, the evening air catching the strands and whipping them like ribbons around her face. Internally, a whirlwind of thoughts fought for dominance, the nature of their latest assignment, and the echoes of their faux engagement looming overhead weighed heavily in her mind. Being undercover is like dancing with a tornado, Enzo said, stepping beside her, gaze fixed on the derelict building across the street. He shifted his weight, twiddling a pen between his fingers, the motion revealing the tension rippling beneath his composed facade. One misstep, and you're swept away. His words hung in the air, pregnant with unvoiced anxiety and undeniable chemistry. Tonja turned to meet his eyes, the light from the nearby street lamp casting his face in soft relief. The roughness of their mission gnawed at her, but the shared silence was intoxicating, sparking a mix of butterflies and dread in the pit of her stomach. "Are you ready for this?" Tonja asked, her own voice steadier than she felt. "Define ready," Enzo replied, his lips quirking into an enigmatic smile, hiding complexities beneath. He brushed his thumb along the pen's edge, contemplating the weight that their intentions harbored. "Because if we don't play our parts well, we're in deep trouble." Tonja considered his response. She could feel the pulse of the city beneath her skin, the clamor of life woven with the creeping darkness of their assignment. She stepped closer, the scent of his cologne, a hint of cedar, and something distinctly him, filling her senses and stirring the quiet bond between them. "Then let's give them a show." Instinctively, she reached out, capturing the back of his hand with hers, the warmth radiating a silent promise. The moment stretched, electric with an unlabeled connection, a blend of camaraderie and something more. The world blurred around them with the chaos of their scheme fading momentarily, leaving just this intimacy. "That's better," Enzo said softly, the underlying tension in his voice fading into the shadows of potential affection. He turned his hand to hold hers more fully, and his touch sent a rush of warmth coursing through her. They stood in companionable silence, the ambient noise of the city merging into a soothing backdrop. Just then, a shout erupted from within the lot, pulling them back to reality. "All right, let's do this." Tonja let go of his hand reluctantly, aware of the fleeting nature of their connection. With calculated steps, they approached the decrepit building that was their entry to the underbelly of the syndicate. The door creaked ominously as they pushed it open, a dull, musty stench wafting out, a bouquet of damp wood, rust, and decay. Inside, the dim light flickered erratically, barely illuminating a sprawl of discarded crates and old machinery collecting dust. Enzo's shoulder brushed against hers, and she felt his presence anchor her against the unfamiliar terrain. "Stick close," he murmured, his voice low, eyes scanning the room like a hawk assessing its domain. Their footsteps echoed against the cold concrete, a reminder of the stakes at hand. As they rounded a corner, Tonja caught a glance of movement at the far end, two men huddled over a table, their voices rising in heated discussion, the glint of something metallic evident on the tabletop. The shift in the atmosphere was instantaneous. The air hummed with tension. "Time to act," Enzo whispered, his tone suddenly serious. With a swift motion, Tonja positioned herself behind a crate, heart racing. The adrenaline surged through her veins, her instincts roaring to life. She seized the moment, snatching a brief, lingering look at Enzo. He offered her a nod encouragement, blended with a silent promise of loyalty. "On three, we head in," she said, barely above a whisper. His determination felt contagious, igniting the anticipation of their roles, their shared deception cloaked in disguise. 1. She flexed her fingers, readying herself. 2. Their eyes locked, a flicker of unspoken understanding electricity coursing between them. 3. They charged forward together, propelled by shared resolve, the facade of their undercover operation, pushing them toward adrenaline-fueled danger and something deeper simmering beneath the surface. "Let's give them a show," Tonja stated, her voice steadier and filled with intention, echoing the essence of their chaotic dance with fate. Scene 14, Facing the Enemy. The late afternoon sun bathed the abandoned warehouse in a golden glow, casting long shadows that danced across the crumbling concrete floor. Dust motes hung lazily in the air, merged with the faint smell of rust and oil from forgotten machinery that lined the walls. This place, once a hub of activity, now felt like a monument to lost potential, reminiscent of the tense atmosphere enveloping Tonja Coleman and Enzo Arnaud as they moved stealthily through the cavernous space. Every instinct hummed in Tonja's heightened awareness, her powerful frame both graceful and alert. She caught a glimpse of Enzo in her peripheral vision, his posture ready, yet laced with the slightest hint of hesitation, like a coiled spring waiting to release its tension. He met her gaze, and though his expression was often enigmatic, she sensed an unspoken connection between them, a current of emotions riddled with danger and magnetism. "Stay low." Tonja's voice was a whisper, but it commanded authority. Enzo nodded, his dark eyes scanning the shadows that loomed like specters. "If they're here, they won't see us coming." He shifted into a crouch, his body language reflecting years of training honed by the agency, a blend of protection and instinct. As they crept deeper into the warehouse, the sound of muffled voices trickled toward them, punctuated by laughter that was far too casual for the curse of the underworld they were about to confront. Tonja felt a prick of unease. There was something almost jovial in the tone, a false sense of security that could explode at any moment. "We're close," Tonja murmured, her gaze flickering to a large container in the corner, where shadows melded seamlessly into nothingness. She felt the weight of her psychic abilities at the edges of her consciousness, sparking warmth that hinted at danger, a sign of something hidden beneath the surface. "Let's take a look," Enzo suggested, his voice a low purr, still echoing with confidence despite the tension threading through the air like a live wire. Just then, a group of figures stepped into the light brash syndicate, members clad in leather jackets, their laughter ringing out like a soft thunder. Tonja's heart raced as tension coiled in her stomach. She recognized one face in the bunch, a notorious thief known for his quick hands and faster feet. She avoided direct eye contact, the intense pulse of her abilities warning her to keep her distance. "Who were you expecting, Santa Claus?" one of them jeered, causing the others to snicker, their bravado unsettling. "Funny. Hope your sleigh's got wheels this time," joked another, tossing a crumpled piece of paper over his shoulder. The paper glided through the air with a careless grace, landing at Tonja's feet like a challenge. Tonja took a breath, forcing herself to track her energy. She needed to stay focused, not let the bravado of the syndicate draw her into their trap. She felt Enzo's presence close beside her, grounded yet electric, like a thunderstorm simmering before the rain. "We should," she began, but before she could finish her thought, a shout erupted from behind them, echoing through the gloom. "Look out!" one of the thieves shouted as the diner door swung open with a crash. A figure barreled through, a rival gang member, his intentions clear as daylight. The atmosphere thickened, anxiety curling around them like fog. In an instant, the warehouse erupted into chaos. "Get down!" Enzo shouted, springing into action. His muscles thrummed with adrenaline as he pulled Tonja low against the ground, shielding her with his broad frame while miraculously dodging a stray punch aimed at the back of his head. Amidst the fracas, Tonja seized the moment. With a burst of her psychic energy, she locked onto the attacker's past, a flash of violence tinged with regret splashing over her keen senses. Just as she deciphered the web of motives beneath skin-deep malice, she felt the weight of a fist slam against her shoulder. "Hands off, sweetheart," a brawny man threatened, but Tonja regained her bearings instantly. With a deft motion, she spun to the side, channeling her strength into a counterattack that sent him sprawling into the nearest crate, splintering wood like brittle bones. Enzo matched her fluidity, a dance of instinct and precision as they moved in sync, trusting their partnership even in the uncertainty swirling around them. "This isn't a game." Tonja shouted across the room, locking eyes with Enzo momentarily. His gaze flickered back to her, filled with both concern and a flicker of admiration. No kidding, he shot back, ducking beneath an incoming fist and propelling himself forward to join her side. In that electrifying snapshot of time, their connection deepened, a fierce, unyielding bond forged in the heat of imminent danger. The stakes were always higher than their personal battle, yet the unspoken possibility of something more lingered in the silence between their movements. As the clash of bodies and the roar of chaos receded, Tanja's heart raced. "Let's finish this," she said breathlessly, determined to reclaim their ground and extinguish the chaos threatening to engulf them. "Together?" Enzo offered, his glance unwavering, a quiet promise hanging like smoke in the air. "Always," she replied, bolstered by his presence as they pressed forward together against the gathering storm. Scene 15. Whispers of betrayal. The air was thick with humidity, oppressive yet strangely intimate, as the late morning sun kicked up a shimmering haze over the bustling atmosphere of the Quantico FBI headquarters. In the dilapidated break room, more a storied archive of past coffee runs than a cozy haven, Tonja Coleman delicately turned the pages of an investigative report. The creased paper felt heavy in her hands, filled with the sharp scent of ink and potential betrayal. She could sense the unease in the air, a low buzz that crackled around her like the static before a storm. "Did you hear about the leak?" Rosie Santana leaned casually against the doorframe, eyes narrowing in concern. Her vibrant attire, bright orange and teal, contrasted sharply against the muted tones of the room, drawing attention without effort. Tanja's focus shifted to her partner and best friend, a fierce presence with a heart that matched her brilliance. "What leak?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with an unmistakable tension that mirrored the dark clouds looming outside. "Word is, someone's been selling our intel to the syndicate." Rosie gestured widely, the colorful rings on her fingers catching the overhead light, like clues spinning in a web of fog. "And it's close, someone who's close to us." The hairs on Tanja's neck stood up, a physical reaction to the weight of Rosie's words. She could feel a tightness in her chest. The sting of betrayal was a bitter pill she had swallowed too many times. "We need to keep our eyes peeled. You know it could be anyone." As if on cue, Enzo Arnaud walked in, his presence pulling the air into place. He held a stack of files, but the moment his eyes met Tanja's, the playful banter dimmed. "What's the chatter?" he asked, raising an eyebrow, his silky dark curls brushing his forehead. "Just the usual office gossip?" Tanja replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "You know how it is around here." The sweetness of her tone belied the tension coiling like a snake in her gut. "Must be a slow day then." Enzo leaned against the sticky table, his casual pose in stark contrast to the coiled atmosphere. But Tanja could see the glimmer of concern behind his charming facade. Rosie stepped closer, her energy like a sudden gust of wind, invigorating yet daunting. "Enzo, we think someone in our circle is leaking sensitive information about the case to the syndicate. We have no way of knowing when or who it is." Enzo's smile faded, replaced by a sharp focus that filled the space between them with unspoken implications. "We can't afford loose ends if we want to crack this. We need to find out who it is fast." Tanja nodded, the heat of determination coursing through her veins. "I'll run some checks on the internal communications. If someone's sending messages out, we'll find a way to trace it." The tension in the room shifted, the cloudy ambiance shifting to a backdrop of shared mission. But the air thickened again as unspoken words circled around them like a watchful entity. "What about the surveillance and the emails?" Rosie asked, her bark breaking through the silence like thunder. "We can't be dealing with this blindly." Enzo's deep voice resonated, calm yet heavy. "We can cover the bases, but if it's someone we trust, how do you confront that?" Tanja felt the gravity of his gaze settle on her. It simmered just beneath the surface, layered with a mix of concern and something unidentifiable. The unspoken question lingered. How do you confront betrayal within the walls that should protect you? "Trust is everything," Tanja breathed, the weight of her own thoughts pressing down on her. "And if we can't trust each other—" She trailed off, the echo of her own fears settling heavy in her chest. An unexpected chuckle startled them from the ensuing silence. It was Greg, one of the tech specialists, standing just outside, earbuds dangling from his neck. A little trust issue at the FBI? That's like saying the sky's blue. He snorted, nudging his glasses up the bridge of his nose, oblivious to the tension. Now, if we're talking about someone leaking our Netflix passwords, I'm all ears. At the light-hearted comment, the tension cracked, releasing a teasing warmth. Enzo shook his head, smirking. Thanks, Greg. That's the kind of helpful insight we need. But as laughter flickered in the room like strobe lights, Tonja's mind raced, her instincts honing in on the lingering threat. Who could it be? And more importantly, what were they willing to sacrifice to maintain their silence? As the day continued to unroll, a sense of anxiety clung to her, unrelenting as storm clouds began pouring rain onto Quantico's streets. Tonja's thoughts were unsettling, a whisper of betrayal chilling her resolve as she prepared to face whatever lay ahead. Enzo's voice broke through her reverie once more, the sincerity punctuating his words as he added, "Whatever it is, we'll handle it together." Together, Tonja echoed, but even that affirmation felt fragile, teetering on a precipice they might not survive. In the eye of the storm, all of them remained blissfully unaware of the deeper treachery lurking just outside the sanctuary of their trust. Scene 16. In the line of fire. Night shrouded the city in a cloak of restless tension, the dim glow of streetlights flickering on the slick asphalt. Tonja and Enzo stood beside a nondescript sedan in a deserted parking lot, their hearts racing as they wrapped up a conversation that felt like a lingering question, one hanging thick in the air. Do you think they know? Enzo's voice cut through the night, laced with an urgency that sent shivers down her spine. Not yet, Tonja responded, her blue eyes searching the darkness for invisible threats. Her stomach twisted, a knot tightening with every second they lingered in their vulnerable state. Just as they stood side by side, the sudden echo of screeching tires shattered the fragile silence, and the night unfolded into chaos. The headlights of multiple vehicles sliced through the shadows, illuminating the figures that poured from them, men clad in black, their faces obscured by masks. "Get down," Tonja barked, her instincts in overdrive. She barely had time to process her own command before she propelled herself forward, grabbing Enzo by the shoulder, tugging him down just as gunfire erupted. The crack of bullets reverberated through the night, punctuated by their quickened breaths. Their bodies pressed against the pavement, heartbeats drumming as they strategized their escape. "Damn it," Enzo grunted, a flash of regret and determination dancing across his features. "We need to get out of here." He glanced back, his expression fierce yet searching, and in that moment she understood. The day's banter, the thrill of the fake engagement, all faded into the urgency of survival and protection. Tonja peered around the vehicle, her psyche flaring with instinct as her powers kicked in, feeding her warning signs. With a swift nod, she gripped Enzo's hand, their fingers entwining instinctively in the chaos. They maneuvered away from the firing line, adrenaline driving them into action. "Through the alley," she shouted, leading him toward the narrow opening that promised cover. But as they dashed forward, a burst of more bullets sprayed through the air, ripping apart the space where they'd just stood. "Go, go," Enzo urged, pulling her tighter against him, the heat of his body a grounding presence. Their legs were propelled by sheer will, every corner turned measured in heartbeats. The air tasted metallic with danger, and the scent of gunpowder stung Tonja's nostrils, competing with the familiar warmth of Enzo's presence beside her. They skidded into a cramped alleyway, breathlessly landing against the cool brick wall, enveloped in darkness. Enzo breathed heavily beside her, fingers still laced with hers, their connection amplifying amidst the danger. "Are you okay?" he whispered, concern darkening his hazel eyes, those pools of warmth now alight with an intensity that made her pulse quicken for reasons that transcended the moment. "I'm fine," she assured, though her heart raced for reasons beyond the chaos outside. The flickering streetlight at the alley's entrance threw shimmers over them, casting enveloping shadows that felt strangely intimate against the harshness of the night. Enzo leaned closer, the tension between them palpable. "We can't stay here long," he reminded her. But his resolve faltered as he searched her face for assurance, for something beyond duty and danger. "I know," she murmured, their breaths mingling, 4 inches apart but miles away from the storm outside. The raw tension crackled, the sophisticated game they had danced around suddenly stripped bare in this moment of vulnerability. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, the lingering touch igniting something deeper, a promise buried beneath the chaos. "Whatever happens," he started, voice low and sure, "I won't let them take you away from me." The sincerity in his eyes radiated warmth, pushing back the shadows of doubt and fear, filling the empty spaces of her heart. In the stillness, she felt the weight of the world lift, an undeniable bond coalescing between them. Without thinking, Tonja leaned in. Her heart raced as she closed the distance, catching the soft whisper of his breath, tasting the urgency of their shared moment on her lips as their mouths met. The kiss ignited, a slow, fervent exploration, imbued with unexpressed fervor and the weight of their collective fears. As their lips melded together, the ambush faded, the world around them muffled, an ethereal silence enveloping the chaos outside. Being this close recalibrated everything, shifting the boundaries between duty, friendship, and the yearning that pulsated beneath the surface. And just as quickly, she pulled away, breathless, eyes locking onto his with fierce determination and a hint of disbelief. "Let's finish this," Tonja breathed, her voice laced with the zest of their newfound connection, a promise that echoed louder than the gunfire outside. Scene 17, The Reckoning. The room pulsed with an electric tension as the late afternoon light slanted through the uncurtained window, slanting shadows across Tonja Coleman's face like the fleeting memories of her more carefree past. The air hung thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth, fresh and invigorating, mingling with the faint aroma of coffee from the half-empty cup on the table. Outside, dark clouds gathered, rolling in like the weight of unspoken fears that clung to her heart. She stood at the window, her tall silhouette framed against the impending storm, a living embodiment of conflict and uncertainty. "Tonja," Enzo Arnaud's voice cut through the silence, a blend of warmth and concern threading his words together. He stood, hands resting comfortably in his pockets, the dim light casting soft shadows across his features, revealing both his charm and his guardedness. "We need to talk about this." She turned to face him, her eyes searching his. The flickering light caught the sheen in his dark hair and the intensity in his gaze. "Do we really?" she replied, her tone sharper than she intended. "Yes," he said, stepping closer, the space between them charged with unsaid feelings. "It's important. Your powers, they can't just be a secret anymore." A gust of wind rattled the window, mirroring the internal storm swirling within Tonja. "You don't understand, Enzo. This isn't just about us. It's about everything I touch, everyone I hold close." She sighed, the weight of the revelation hanging heavy in her chest. "I've seen things, terrible things that haunt me. When I touch someone, I can feel their past, their pain. What if I touch you and it overwhelms me? Or worse, what if I don't know who to trust?" Stepping into the light, Enzo's brow furrowed with compassion. "And what if you do? We're partners for a reason. Your strength, your vision, they're gifts, Tonja, not burdens. We'll face them together." His reassurance enveloped her like a warm embrace, and for a moment, she let herself lean into that comfort. "I want to believe that," she whispered, vulnerability spilling from her lips. "But what if I can't control it? What if I fail?" "You won't," Enzo said, his voice steady and confident. "And even if you slip up, I'll be right there beside you to catch you. This fake engagement, it's not just a cover for investigation. It's a choice we made. Together." He drew closer, the tension thrumming between them like a coiled spring ready to snap. They stood inches apart, the rhythm of their heartbeats echoing in the charged air. Tonja felt her pulse quicken, energy radiating dangerously around them. She caught a fleck of worry in his eyes, and something inside her softened. "I don't want this to be just a job for us," Tonja confessed, her voice barely above a whisper as she looked into his eyes, searching for understanding. Enzo reached out, his fingers brushing against hers in a fleeting yet electric connection. "Then let's make it more than that," he murmured, the sincerity of his gaze pulling her closer. "Let's face this together." She tentatively leaned in, their faces inches apart, the heat of his breath mingling with hers. The storm outside crashed louder, echoing her tumultuous thoughts. But in this moment, the world shrank down to the two of them. Before she knew it, Enzo closed the distance, his lips capturing her softly, testing the waters, a gentle reassurance that set her ablaze. The kiss was tender, filled with an unspoken promise of loyalty and understanding, unveiling layers of emotions hidden beneath their playful banter. It was a collision of hope and fear, a declaration that transcended the chaos around them. As Tonja melted into him, she felt her worries ebb slightly, overwhelmed by the thrill of being tethered to him in this whirlwind. For those precious moments, the weight of her psychic abilities faded, those visions dulled by the warmth of their connection. And just as she moved to deepen the kiss, the wind howled outside, the storm breaking loose as if demanding their attention. But for now, in the eye of their emotional hurricane, the chaos could wait. What lay ahead was uncertain, but with Enzo, perhaps it was a path worth exploring, one step at a time. "What if the next vision I have changes everything?" she asked, pulling back slightly, her heart racing with a mixture of dread and excitement. "We'll deal with it, together." With those words hanging between them, heavy but hopeful, Tanja finally allowed herself to believe in the possibility of love, even amidst the looming tempest of their realities. Scene 18, Secrets Revealed. As the day faded, leaving the sky a bruised purplish hue, Tonja Coleman stood at the kitchen counter, peeling a potato with methodical precision. The rhythmic slicing, gliding through the skin, matched the pulse of her thoughts, a flurry of questions knitted together by the unsettling mystery they had been grappling with. Enzo Arnaud leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, an unreadable shadow flitting across his face. "Dinner's almost ready," she said, not looking up from her task. The air was thick with the aroma of sautéed onions and garlic, warm and inviting, but it clashed with the undercurrent of tension that crackled between them. "Need any help?" he asked, his tone casual, but her instincts picked up the strained note beneath it. She finally met his gaze, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Are you really going to help, or just stand there looking handsome?" she quipped, a teasing smile flicking to life before dying at the edges, fading into the gravity of their mission. There was a pause heavy and pregnant with something unsaid. Enzo's lips quirked in a half smile, but his eyes remained distant, as if looking past her into a chasm of unspoken fears. "Always the charmer, huh?" Enzo replied, pushing away from the doorframe with a reluctant sigh. He approached the counter, where the evening light glinted off the knife and the glimmer of her resolve. "What's really going on, Tanja?" The question hung in the air, swirling with the scent of herbs and salt. She dropped the potato into the pot, the splash breaking through the silence that had enveloped them. "I could ask you the same thing," she said, leaning back slightly, crossing her arms defensively. The tension coiled tighter, each heartbeat echoing like a drum. "You've been distracted." He turned away from her, pacing slightly, the slick tile beneath his shoes meeting the soft cushion of her heartbeat. The kitchen felt suddenly claustrophobic, the warmth more suffocating than comforting. "What do you mean?" he asked, though his voice held the weight of denial. "I'm focused on our case." "Focused or hiding?" she shot back, her tone sharper than intended. She took a breath, trying to temper her frustration mixed with concern. "I'm not angry, Enzo. I'm worried. You're different." "Different how?" He stopped, turning back to face her, the challenge burning in his gaze. Yet beneath it, she saw the flicker of vulnerability. "Like you're holding something back." She continued, her voice softer now, probing. "You don't have to carry this alone. We're partners, remember?" He ran a hand through his hair, the action deceptively casual but betraying a shifting storm. "It's complicated, Tanja." "Complicated how?" He hesitated, his jaw tightening as if battling his own internal conflict. The silence stretched, thickening until it felt almost tangible between them. Tanja took a step forward, no longer clutching her defenses so tightly. "Look, I know how deep this goes for you," she said, her voice a mere whisper. "I can see the shadows, if there's something we need to face together." "Together," he echoed, but there was a hardness in his voice that sent a chill down her spine. He turned his eyes away from her, staring through the kitchen window, through the darkening glass. "To be honest, there are things about this case, things I should have told you." "What do you mean, Enzo?" Her heart raced, a mix of dread and hope mingling in her chest. He finally turned back, and she felt the connection between them shift, the air thickening with gravity. "I knew someone connected to this crime, someone we're supposed to find." What? Panic laced her voice. What are you saying? The victim. She was my sister. His confession smashed through the walls they had built around their partnership, reverberating through the silence like a crack of thunder. Tonja inhaled sharply, the revelation crashing over her like icy water. All of her instinctive defenses slipped away as she processed the depth of his words. You didn't tell me. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to let anybody in. Enzo, she breathed, her thoughts racing. It complicates everything. He stepped toward her, vulnerability bleeding through the rough surface of his guarded exterior. I know, but that doesn't change our mission. We still need to find out who did this. For her. It felt as though the very foundation of their partnership had shifted. In his pained eyes, Tonja saw not only his struggle, but the heavy burden of familial ties woven into their investigation. You're carrying this alone when you don't have to. I want to help you with this. I appreciate that, he murmured, the warmth of his resolve mirrored in hers. They stood, mere inches apart, the space between them suddenly crackling with potential, a fragile truce born from the weight of shared scars. As the air hummed with unresolved tension, Tonja's heart raced for reasons beyond the investigation, a connection forged in the crucible of their shared secrets and pain. Enzo reached a hand out, brushing against her arm, a fleeting touch laden with the promise of understanding and the fear of stepping into deeper waters. Together? He asked, his voice a low rumble as their eyes connected in a moment that felt both charged with electricity and yet entirely human, transcending the chaos around them. Always, she whispered back, her heart aching with unspoken fears as shadows loomed ever closer. Scene 19, Confronting Fear. The air was thick with anticipation as the heavy clouds loomed over the abandoned warehouse, a relic of a forgotten industrial era in northeast D.C. The dampness clung to the skin like a warning, the scent of rust mingling with the sharp tang of adrenaline. Inside, flickering fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow on the assembled group. Tonja Coleman stood at the center, her tall, athletic frame exuding a calm that was in stark contrast to the stifling tension. She could feel the pulsing energy of her powers, the psychic tendrils reaching out for connection amid the disgruntled whispers of the informants scattered before her. Let's get this over with, Tonja said, her voice steady and authoritative, masking the roiling storm of unease within. Beside her, Enzo Arnaud's hands were jammed deep into the pockets of his tailored jacket. His usually playful demeanor was replaced with a grim resolve that intrigued and unsettled her. Kenny, a wiry man with a reputation for half-truths and fast talk, leaned forward. Look, you two know what you're asking us for, but you'd have better luck pulling teeth than getting us to spill all our secrets. He laughed, but the humor fell flat in the tense atmosphere. It's not just about the secrets, Kenny, Enzo interjected, his deep voice cutting through the chatter. It's about lives. You're playing with fire. The air crackled around them, the threat heavy like the impending storm. An uneasy silence settled, punctuated only by the faint hum of machinery and distant raindrops hitting the metal rooftop. Tonja's gaze flickered to Enzo, his vulnerability masked beneath layers of confidence always fascinated her. She felt the familiar pull towards him, but there was no time for distractions. Enough games, Tonja said, her voice rising. She took a step forward, unyielding, her patience thinning under the weight of her powers pulling at the swirl of emotions around her. You've seen too much. If you don't cooperate, you're only sealing your own fate. With each word, she felt the visions flickering at the edges of her mind, kaleidoscopic images of violence and despair that turned her stomach, but she focused, reaching out with her hand toward Kenny. She wanted to glean something from him, not from his words, but from the pulse of fear she sensed just beneath the bravado. As their palms brushed, a spark ignited through her, and a flood of memories washed over her, quick as a flash. Suddenly, the cacophony of the warehouse dimmed, replaced by fragmented images of a meeting with masked figures, shady deals whispered behind closed doors, and the flickering shadows of a woman one she couldn't identify, but who carried a menace that set her heart racing. She pulled her hand back, breathing sharply, her pulse racing. They've got a woman working for them, someone integral. The storm? Enzo's voice snapped her from her trance, his brow furrowing. The tension between them crackled anew as she turned to meet his gaze. There was something about that term that made them all wary. Yeah, Kenny replied, eyes darting back and forth like a trapped animal. There've been whispers, but she's not like any of us. She's got her own powers. Even the syndicate's scared of her. The storm outside unleashed its fury, rattling the roof above them and mirroring the war within the group. Tonja could feel the emotional stakes rising, their truths laid bare amidst the chaos. We need to know who she is and what she wants. That's our only way to get ahead. The group stiffened as the murmurs flared, jealousy and anger simmering among the informants. One of them, a tall woman with fierce eyes and a sharp tongue, stepped forward. You don't get to threaten us. We're not just going to roll over and bow to you. Her voice dripped defiance. Then you'll drown in your own ignorance, Enzo retorted, his eyes gleaming with a protective ferocity that ignited something within Tonja. She caught his gaze, admiration intertwining with an unspoken understanding of the weight they carried. You want us to risk everything? Kenny's sharp tone broke through. What's in it for us? Survival, Tonja shot back, her voice low and intense, and the chance to finally bring the syndicate down. There was a pause, and for a moment the world hung on the precipice of decision. Kenny's shoulders slumped slightly. She read the resignation in his eyes. Fine, he muttered, but we're not taking all the risks. Enzo finally stepped closer, the space between him and Tonja fraught with everything unspoken. As the storm raged outside, the tension simmered, and for the briefest moment, she felt the electricity between them, fingers brushing again, not just from the urgency of the situation but from a deeper longing, a promise of solidarity amid the chaos. I just hope you know what you're doing, he whispered, something tender flickering in his gaze. It's all I know how to do, Tonja replied, grounding herself in the moment as their eyes locked, the storm crashing against the old warehouse, continuing to echo the turmoil of their intertwined fates. Scene 20. Friend or foe? The late afternoon sun filtered through the grime-streaked windows of the abandoned warehouse, casting playful patterns on the concrete floor. Tonja Coleman and Enzo Arnaud stood shoulder to shoulder near the center of the vast, desolate space. It had become their makeshift headquarters for unraveling the web of the crime syndicate that threatened their lives and the city they protected. Tonja reached for a file on the table, her fingertips brushing over the embossed cover. The faintly recognizable scent of dust mixed with the stale air clung to the room, reminding her of other places they had worked together. We're onto something here, she said, her voice steady, but a hint of anxiety lingered in her tone. Enzo leaned in closer, his dark eyes narrowing. If they find out we're asking questions, it won't just be another day in the field. We have to tread carefully. His voice felt both cautious and assertive, merging into a sound that demanded her attention. An imperceptible silence enveloped them, stretching on until it felt uncomfortable. She sighed, breaking the tension. I know the risk, Enzo, but what if they're working with someone inside the bureau? Every step we take could lead us deeper into danger. His gaze flickered, revealing a swirl of emotions barely contained beneath the surface. Trust me, it's easy to misread allies as enemies and enemies as friends. He paused, chewing on his words. But with this whole charade of ours, it's getting tougher every day to tell who's really on our side. Tonja took a step back, crossing her arms in defiance, the sunlight catching the glint of her bracelet as though it sought to illuminate her resolve. Is that what this is about? Whether I'm really your partner or not? The question hung in the air, charged with an energy that threatened to spill over. Enzo clenched his jaw, frustration etched across his features. That's not what I meant. His voice raised slightly, echoing in the emptiness. And you know it. This is bigger than us. Than this fake engagement? She shot back, her words sharper than she intended. The facade they had constructed for their investigation felt increasingly flimsy now, like the delicate fabric of a gown caught on a jagged edge. Is it so fake? He replied, the dynamic shifting from tension to something softer, more complicated. He took a measured breath, closing the gap between them, his voice lower. You're the best partner I've ever had, and I don't want to lose that. A sound echoed from the shadows, a subtle scrape against concrete. They turned, a silence snaking back into the air, thick and palpable. Enzo stepped in front of Tanja instinctively, eyes searching through the dimness. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, the focus on the unknown chilling the air around them. "Yes," Enzo replied tightly, his posture coiling in readiness. They had both been trained to anticipate the unexpected, yet that didn't dull their adrenaline's bite. Just then, a figure slipped out from behind a cluster of crates, the light catching their features, dark, menacing eyes, and a sardonic smile, revealing the new villain in their midst. "Well, well, what a cozy little setup you have," he drawled, his voice threaded with danger. Tanja narrowed her eyes. "Who are you?" The figure leaned casually against a beam, exuding an unsettling calm. "Name's Delvin. I hear you're asking too many questions." "What do you want?" Enzo demanded, shifting into a more protective stance, muscles tensing. Delvin shrugged, a feigned disinterest. "Just to see how deep the rabbit hole really goes. But you? I suspect you're far more interesting than you let on." His gaze lingered on Tanja, a flicker of acknowledgement passing between them. "Powerful and armed with secrets. Bet you'd love to play." With that, the tension broke, turning into something more primal. Before they could react, he dashed toward Tanja, eyes blazing with intensity. She felt the familiar electric charge in the air, instinctively letting her senses guide her as she sidestepped, her movements swift and fluid. Enzo lunged forward, fists raised, adrenaline surging. "Back off," he yelled, his body a shield before hers. Tanja's heart raced, her mind a flurry of fight or flight. "Enzo, wait." But before she could finish, Delvin launched himself toward them, their worlds shattering into instinctual motion. In that fractured moment, she caught Enzo's gaze, protective, fierce, yet filled with an intensity that promised more than mere partnership. "Together," she shouted, and as they engaged, their spirits aligned, a storm of determination binding them in battle against a foe fueled by the very chaos they sought to dismantle. But as Delvin's power clashed with theirs, a lingering question echoed in Tanja's mind in the chaos. Were they truly friends, or just pawns in a dangerous game?